Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Conversational Witchcraft with me, Dawn, the Kitchen Witch. Today, I'm really excited because I have a really interesting guest, someone who does something that we've not talked about on this show whatsoever. So this is going to be really awesome. Today, we have Sam Bo Thompson. He has been a practicing pagan since the 90s and a past VP and president of the Triad CUUPs, which is the Covenant of the Unitarian Universalist Pagans. During the years, he has become a Reiki Master Teacher and a certified Great Life Coach. He learned Primitive Blacksmithing in 2012 and was honored to have been a finalist on Our State magazine for a forged steel and copper rose. He is a proud Army veteran and is a dedicated priest of the Morrigan. He teaches both primitive blacksmithing and magical blacksmithing in the foothills of North Carolina. Bo, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you. So excited.
This is great. Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to meeting the guy you just talked about.
No, he sounds cool, right? Very cool. And I want to say, as we all should, thank you for your service as an Army veteran. I don't think we've had a veteran on the show, and I certainly haven't had a blacksmith. So when you reached out and said, "Hey, I have this book. Are you willing to look at it?" I was like, "This is cool. This is really, really cool." So how did tell us a little bit about your journey as a pagan before I hit the record buttons? You said you grew up in Appalachia. So, how did you find this path there?
Well, Appalachia's long, right?
Yes.
I mean, it runs from Georgia to Maine. And
Yes.
I grew up in the southern part. Western North Carolina is where I call home. And I've been a practicing pagan for, 30 years, way back before it was cool, right?
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Back during the witch wars and all the fun stuff. And I've got, I don't even have a t-shirt anymore. I wore it out, right? But I mean, I got started. I was in the service, serving West Germany, first Gulf. Still have sand in my foot locker. And this was before the internet, right? And all we had over there was Armed Forces radio. There wasn't satellite. We just got whatever they decided to feed us at the time. So I read a lot. It was the way that I escaped. And I just jumped into fantasy. I've always been kind of drawn to the legends of King Arthur and the romantic Middle Ages, right? Reality is different than thought, right? Sometimes. Mm-hmm. And ran into some books and thought, early that really about kind of cool if that existed. And at the time, I'm steadily staunch Southern Baptist. And as life kind of continued, dots started to kind of appear to try to connect. And I ended up, I don't think converting is the right word that I want to use. I changed thought processes, right? So I just was one thing, and I decided to look at things a different way.
Well, you find a different path as you're learning these things, and it's almost like I'm what I like to call a recovering Catholic. I mean, Southern Baptist, that's a big conversion, right?
Primitive Southern Baptist.
You'll have to define that for us and explain that a little bit.
It's very evangelical and Pentecostal. Mm-hmm. And then you throw in a healthy dose of moonshine and a bunch of other stuff, and I lived in a place where my family tree didn't fork, right? So, I say, everybody's kin to everybody else, right. So it's just, it's really, kindergarten through 12th grade rode the same bus. There was like less than 70 in my graduating class. Wow. I grew up, my house did not have phone or power, so I mean, I grew up primitive. I mean, that's how I grew up. So a lot of these other things, I hear people talk about it. I'm like, sissy, my internet's down. Oh, whoa.
Oh, yeah. and that's interesting. That's interesting too, because first of all, in growing up like that, you are definitely more connected to earth and elements and nature and all those things. And yet you're raised in this, as you put it, Pentecostal Baptist faith.
Well, my friends were the trees, and I didn't know. I didn't know. Right? Because I mean, I have what I have. But I mean, I remember, because I grew up, I was like 2 miles from the bus stop.
Right.
And I grew up in the mountains, and I grew up with the trees and the plants, and that's who I played with. Lack of a better word. And I just, I think a lot of that was good fodder for what comes later. Maybe I'm not done yet, so we'll see how all that kind of plays out. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's just one of those things that kind of started, and I just it made sense to me.
Right. So then you're a young man and you're in the army and you're serving overseas and you're reading books and you're going, huh, this makes
Wouldn't that be cool?
sense.
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool?
This makes sense. That'd be cool. Oh, wait, this exists. And you're finding all that at such a pivotal time, right?
And then I got back, and it was several years later before I actually changed thought processes, right? I guess that when the internet kind of started getting out, and I started finding information and looking at things and doing some research and reading and finding out, it was a possibility, right? It made things in my thought process duality made sense to me. Because the world is, the planet is dual. Male and female plant species all the way up. It was just a natural, wasn't a much of a leap to go,
Wow.
Anyway, I don't need it's not trying to proselytize or anything like that. It's just,
no. I'm very interested. I'm always interested in people's journeys and how they got from A to B, because my journey is so unique and then everyone else's journey is so unique. So, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit, if anybody is out there listening and feeling kind of like a push-pull and going, I come from this background that's really tight and constrictive. For me, as a recovering Catholic, I always felt like part of the beautiful transition into identifying as a pagan and finding the pagan path was the breath that I could explore and expand and be whatever, do whatever, believe whatever, pray to whoever, the creative process of spirituality. I wasn't, I have to stick into this one little narrow path. Can you talk about what that experience was like for you? Kind of like you said, changing the thought process. Was there fear involved in that?
Gosh, yeah, because you think about, you go from, you know what you need to do. Here's your 10 items. Don't do this.
Right. Right.
You go to, whatever, right? As long as you don't hurt nobody, just, go fly, be free.
Right.
And there was so much unknown. It was, because you don't know if you're doing it right, and at the time, really the only thing that was available that was known much was Wicca, right?
Right.
And this was Scott Cunningham, those type of people, and so it was very unsettling because now I'm in the uncharted territory, because there was no path. You know what I mean? There's this, I had to kind of figure it out myself. And even today, I think that's difficult for people because nobody's telling you what to do. The beauty of it is no one tells you what to do.
Right.
The scary part is no one tells you what to do. So you have to figure it out yourself. And I think the elephant in the living room is it's about relationship. And humans, I have looked at and seen, and we're not real good at that. We're not really good at relationships.
How do you mean?
Gosh, look at the divorce rate. Okay, we're not good at relationships. Looked at friends don't stay friends. Our relationships are all electronic. And it's great. It served a purpose. If it hadn't have been for electronics through the pandemic, who knows what happened, right?
Right.
Don't even want to think about that.
Right.
But we don't work on relationships. It's easier just to go get a new one than it is to work on the one that we have. right? So, if this deity is not working out for us, it's just really wasn't work for me. I'm gonna go work with this one. Maybe this one will be easier. Yeah, and I'm on full disclosure, I spent the first 25 years not being attached to any of them, wearing it like a badge of honor. I'm not dedicated to anybody. I'm my own man.
Right.
Nobody,
Right.
there's no strings on me,
Right. Right.
And until the Morrigan came calling, because I like the idea of being able to, cut bait, if I don't like the way this is working, I'm gonna go take my toys and go play somewhere else. And I'm just as guilty as, I'm talking to myself, right, with this. And I think learning about having that intimate relationship. I mean, there's other than my beloved, I don't have another intimate relationship like that. Right. I mean, there's not anybody else, anything else that I have that type of relationship with that I have with my deity. And that's hard.
Right. So talk a little bit about, I just love where you're going. There's so many things.
Yeah, I know. Now what? I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
will take you down a rabbit hole of epic proportions on a regular basis.
We love rabbit holes. We love them. I want to hear about how you said until the Morrigan came calling, I had no strings on me. I didn't have that kind of level of intimacy with the deity. I didn't have that. When did the Morrigan tap on your shoulder and say, "Hey, you're looking right at me"? When did that happen, and how did that inform your magical practices, your spiritual life?
Well, I mean, up until then, I was I was pretty willy-nilly. I'm really big on full disclosure. It's just there's nothing. There's nothing to see. There's nobody behind.
Right. It is what it is.
It is. I don't mind talking because it's in the past, and I learned a lot from it. Right. But it was pretty much my practice was kind of willy-nilly. I'd practiced the eights, and my beloved and I would do what we needed to do, and some of it felt like lip service because it was. In the Baptist community, you'd call it backsliding.
I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah, it's just where you're just not practicing what you should be.
Right? The hypocrisy.
Yeah, better. You're just not doing what you should do.
Right. That's like when you're in a Catholic church and everybody turns around and give you the handshake of peace, and they're the first people to give you the finger in the parking lot.
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
So, I'm sitting out on I remember it vividly. I was sitting out on the porch in the evening. It was springish because it was easy. I was out there with my second or third, fifth adult beverage, just kind of chilling out, listening to the cicadas, and it was kind of twilight, which is the wrong time. If you're wanting to avoid her, don't do that because that's
right.
her time anyway.
Right.
And she says, I have something I need you to do, and it wasn't like a burning bush or a bolt of light. I just knew who it was, right? And it was just one of those things that kind of happened in my head. It wasn't like a particular voice. I couldn't pick her out of a lineup. I couldn't, none of that stuff. So it wasn't anything sexy like that. It was just I knew who it was. And I was my first thing was, no, you don't. This is not the droid you're looking for.
Right.
I am,
right.
You must not be familiar with my work, right? And this went on about 6 months. Her kind of after me. I'm like, all right, well, let's roll with it. Why not?
Right.
And once again, me not being the sharpest tool in the shed, didn't realize you could limit a relationship with a deity. I just figured it was all or nothing. I'm still pulling on my Southern Baptist roots, and when you dedicate, you just dedicate,
Right.
And so I was just, well, and I'm the type of person, I'm not, I don't half-ass anything, right?
Yeah, no, if I'm going to do something, I use my whole ass or no ass at all.
Yeah, just, make a complete wreck of it and own it, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of what I did. And it was definitely has been a life-changing journey over the last 6-ish years. I wouldn't change it. She's she has completely rearranged my lifestyle. It has been it's been hard. I mean,
Yeah.
she's tough. Um, I will not say I've loved every minute of it, because I'll be lying. There are times where I have had to learn to embrace the suck.
Yeah.
But I'm a much better person for it, and here we are.
I think a lot of people that have these, I don't want to say lightning bolt moments with a deity, but a profound connection. They would say this, they would say similar things. When I started working with Hecate, I had a similar situation where I asked her a question and she smacked me in the face with the answer. And I was like, oh shit, like, oof, that I wasn't expecting that. Cause again, when you grow up in a certain way, you don't necessarily have those profound moments with deity or energy or spirit. And then when that particular deity, that particular energy, or that particular spirit wants to connect with you and you are ready, it shows up, whether you're ready or not. Right. And that's kind of what it sounds like happened to you. She was like, you're fucking ready. And you're like, no, I'm not.
I don't want to do any of that.
I'm not.
I'm
This is
cool.
not work. I'm not.
That's hard. Fuck
You
that.
got the wrong person.
I'm good, man. Look at me.
Right.
my
You're like,
life's
I'm
great.
out here listening to cicadas. I'm not here having a conversation with you, but you did eventually listen, right?
Yeah.
And that from that point forward, have you been dedicated to the Morgan?
Oh yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
So that's incredible that has only been a short period of time, with the fact that you've been, because you said that was about 6 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've been a practicing pagan
For
for
30.
And it's only recently, relatively speaking, that you started working with her.
Yeah.
Did you have any deep connection to other deity beforehand?
I tried working because, being a smith, right? I thought, well, okay, well, I'm gonna hang out with Bridget. And it just,
Sure.
it makes sense, right?
Sure.
That's who
Yeah.
or governor, hang out with Big Daddy, or, and I'm just like, they just didn't, there wasn't that connection. Now I have spent time, working with them, but not in that capacity.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just,
So
she's been life changing.
can you share an example of how that relationship with the Morgan changed your life or changed your practice, like a specific thing that maybe you do now that you didn't do before, or a dedication that you do now that maybe you didn't do before?
I think the biggest thing that she has changed, thing that I do now that I don't do, I don't ask, I don't put stuff off as much.
Ooh.
When she makes, have you seen the movie Boondock Saints?
No.
Okay, this won't make any
But
sense.
I'm sure lots of other people have.
Okay, so there's a scene at the end of the movie to where they're in a court, and the two brothers are there, and they're making this big speech, and they're telling people what to do, what not to do, and they're saying these were not polite suggestions. And I've picked up on that, and that's part of my relationship with the Morrigan, is when she says something to me, I call it a polite suggestion, as a way to laugh it off, because that's what I'm going to go do, because I don't have training wheels on my relationship with her. Right. So there's not only if I want to do something do I do it. We're only in these small sections of things. That's just not how I'm not saying those relationships are wrong or bad. It's just not how my relationship with her is. So, she gives me these polite suggestions, and it's funny because even now I'm still a kind of a toddler and will say no. She'll say, you need to do such and such, and I'll say, no, I don't. The book is a perfect example. She needs to write. No, I don't. I don't even speak English. What the hell you want me to do writing it? But I mean, I'm gonna, once again, back to full disclosure, I was a fairly heavy drinker. I was an evening drinker.
Yeah.
Right. Worked really hard during the day, got my work done. At night, the bottle came open, and my problem with drinking is running out.
Mhm.
It wasn't a mean drunk or anything like that. It's just
Mhm.
back to escape, right? And I know that. But
Mhm.
she had a task for me to do that involved the veteran community. And
Mhm.
I couldn't do it because I drank, because in order for me to do it, I had to be clean and sober.
Wow.
Okay. And I would tell her, I would love to do that, but I can't do that because I'm doing this, and
Right.
that's just not going to work for me.
Right.
So she caused a situation to where I no longer drink.
Wow.
She's like, how about now? I'm like, all right. So I haven't had any kind of drink or drug in over 3 years.
Well, congratulations to you.
And well,
That's a
thank
big
you. And
deal.
I haven't quit. I'm just not doing it because I got this thing to do. So as soon as she releases me from doing this thing, I'm sure I'm gonna hit the scotch. But
I'm pretty sure
right
she's
now,
not going to release
well,
you.
we're not gonna worry about that right now. Right now,
Right.
I'm
Because
not.
right, you're
Right.
in this moment of service
Yeah,
with this deity who is guiding you to do these things. And
yeah,
she's like, well, while you're in my service, you can't do that thing. You got to do this thing. You can't do that thing.
yeah. I need
You
you to
know?
do this thing, but I can't do that thing because I'm doing this other thing. Well, we'll remove this excuse. How about now?
Hmm.
Now can you do that?
Hmm.
So I'm like, okay.
Do you find that, and again, this is based off my own experience, right? We're talking a lot here. And again, for people that aren't really familiar with doing deity work or communing with a deity. And again, I'm going to say whether it's deity, spirit, or any a certain type of energy. It could be anything that you're working with, right? In this case, we're talking about deities, but for me, it tends that communication when you're saying, she told me to do this, she told me to do that, I have to do this for whatever. It comes in the form, for me, it comes in the form of intuition. It'll be a quiet moment where I get a gut feeling, or something will happen and I'm like, oh, that's you talking to me. And I need to listen to this.
And I think back to the relationship thing, once you have that relationship, you know what the voice sounds like.
Say that again.
So
Once you know,
once you have that relationship, you know what the voice sounds like. I spend time every morning. I can't think of five over the last 5 years, 5 mornings that I have missed spending the first part of my day with her every morning. I spend minimum of 5 minutes, sometimes half an hour, depending on what's going on, that I spend. That's her time. She gets first time in the morning, and that's every morning.
and what does that time with your deity look like? Is it meditation? Is
It's
it
a it's a
prayer?
it's quiet time, because I think meditation, we've just beat the shit out of that word. It doesn't
We
mean
have, we have, yeah,
we've talked about it so much, and I can't meditate. Everybody's thinking you're going to be some kind of Zen monk out on a mountain with lotus
right,
flower. And
right.
I spend quiet time. That's how I look at it as far as meditating. It's quiet
Hmm.
time that I spend. I light a candle on the altar for both warmth and light, right?
Hmm.
And I serve her water every morning for both cleansing and for quenching, right? For thirst. And then there are times when I will serve her scotch. And because that is when I have a need, right? When I'm going through trials or I'm going through challenges, I'll serve her scotch in a shot glass that I made. Because that's my preferred drink of choice. So that, to me, that's my sacrifice.
Mm.
So I will serve that on her altar. And I light all that up, and then I just spend time going through. There's a litany of names that she's called, right? There's names that she's called throughout the lore, and I'll just kind of spend time and calling to those names and see what jumps up. See, there's some mornings that are quiet and I'm gone about my day, and there's some mornings where we're there longer. Good.
Yeah.
I need to rephrase that, because that's really that's not really true. The very first thing I do every morning is feed the cats. As soon as I get the cats fed, then I spend time with them more.
Let's
Nothing's
make sure we
happening in
have
this
our
house.
priorities correct.
Yeah, they
Okay,
will tear the
people.
door down.
Feed your cats.
Yeah.
Take care of your fur babies. I think that's a really interesting morning ritual. And I heard recently someone refer to that quiet time, and they were talking about God, their whoever they but they use the word God, and they said in the morning, I spend 20 minutes praying and 20 minutes meditating. And praying was talking to God, and meditating was listening.
Nice.
And
I
I
like it.
thought, wow,
That's
what
pretty
a
cool.
cool, right? Like when we're putting it out there, we're talking, we're giving. And then when we're meditating, I'm using air quotes,
Right.
or having that quiet time or going inward, we can then receive whatever those messages are because we're not being distracted by other things, right? So I'm just so your relationship with the Morgan is beautiful. And thank you
Oh,
so much
thank you.
for sharing it with us because
I have a fondness for it.
I don't think enough people kind of like talk about that practice. So many witches, they're all like, oh, Hecate, 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 Bridget, Bridget, Bridget. But I don't think that there's a lot of folks that talk too much about the Morgan. I don't think there's a lot of folks that talk too much about Lilith. And these are important energies. So thank you for sharing that with
Oh,
us.
sure.
Um,
And she's just to talk a little bit more about her before we move on. Everybody kind of sees her as a war goddess and psychopomp and yes, and she is so much more than that.
yeah.
I mean, that's really my relationship with her is just a small part. Because I thought when we first started, working together, that because I was a literal warrior, that had been to war, that was why. And
Mm,
other than me doing the work that I work with in the veteran community for her, that's not. And even that doesn't have anything to do with war. It has more to do with recovering from war.
mm,
So so I'm like,
wow.
people always talk about, she's a badass war goddess and yada, yada, yada. I said, yeah, I get that. Yes, I 100% agree,
Hmm.
but you're missing one facet of the diamond,
Hmm.
because she is so much more than that.
Right.
Anyway,
Well, a general's only as good as his soldiers, right? So if we're looking at her in that typical way of saying she's a war goddess, she's in charge of, war and the charge, and she's also then in charge of the people who serve and the people who fight. And part of that serving those who serve beside you is to care for them before, during, and after the service.
well, and if you look at today's modern army, right? I can't speak to days of yore. I always love using that word whenever I can. The days of yore, right? In today's army, only 25% are combat troops.
Mhm.
So 75% are support.
Right.
So there's a lot more to being like you said, a war goddess
Yeah.
than just, fisticuffs,
Yeah.
right? I mean, somebody's got to get the mail, somebody's got to cook the food,
Right.
somebody's got to make sure I got gas,
Right.
somebody's got to make sure, there's a lot more going on than that. Anyway, all right.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
absolutely. And again, this is why one of the things that, I wanted to talk to you about to have this perspective. I think it's important for people who are practicing pagans, people that are working with deity, but also people who have been through war, been through, service jobs like being on a police force or being on, an EMT, a retired EMT has seen to me, that's a warrior. That's somebody that rushes into a burning building. That's a warrior, So the Morgaine is this energy that I see as leading that charge and caring for all of these people that do these. I couldn't do these jobs. I couldn't do these things, that these places of respect that are there fighting for the lives of others. And that's the space that she can hold. Right. And that's what she's encouraging you to do is going, I'm holding space for you. Now you go and hold that space for other people. I
Yeah.
think it's amazing. And I love your perspective on it. So again, thank you for sharing it with us. This
Sure.
is awesome. This is awesome. Um, so like I have like I have a million notes written down here, things I want to ask you about. Um, Maybe we should take a break. And so now we know who you are, Bo, and we know what your practice is rooted in. So when we come back from our break, we're going to get into the physicality of your practice, with your metalworks, how you're using your metalworks in honor of the Morrigan. And we're going to talk about your book, Metal Never Lies. We will be right back with Sam Bo Thompson. Welcome back to Conversational Witchcraft with me, Dawn the Kitchen Witch. And today we are talking with the very interesting, incredibly enlightening Sam Bo Thompson, and learning all about his really deep relationship with the Morrigan. And he has a brand new book out called Metal Never Lies. I'm not going to lie to you. When I first saw the title of the book, I was like, ooh, heavy metal. And then I realized it was actual metal. And this is very exciting. You self-published this book, did you not?
Yeah.
And this again was, as you said before, the Morrigan told you, you got to get this shit done. Right.
Yeah.
So I want to know, let's start with this.
Okay.
Let's go back. Were you a smith before? Like, how long have you been a smith? How long have you been a blacksmith?
Oh, much longer than working with metal magic.
Really? When did
Yes.
that begin? So talk to us about how you found becoming a blacksmith, and then how that kind of like flowed into being a magical work.
Started out a decade or so ago. I wanted to honor my grandfather. Growing up Southern Appalachia, we all probably in middle and northern Appalachia too. But everybody had a smithy, right, in their work area, because you had to order stuff from the Sears and Roebucks, and it was 3 weeks, right? So I mean, you didn't run to Walmart, pick you out another shovel, you fix it, right? So it was about fixing your tools. The only time you bought a new tool is when you couldn't fix what you had. Okay. And that was almost a bad thing to have a new tool, right? Because it just means you couldn't figure it out, right? Anyway, well, it was not a good thing. It wasn't like having new shoes on was kind of cool, no.
Yeah.
Now you got to break them in. Your foot's gonna hurt.
Right.
No.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So I wanted to honor him, and I wanted to. Some of my fondest memories were working in the smithy, right, fixing stuff in the workshop. He wasn't a full-time smith or anything like that. It was just something that you did. So I went and found a course to where I could learn primitive smithing, mainly because I could afford that, right? Because I wanted to actually learn the craft, and looking at doing a brief amount of research on it, it's expensive. It can be really, really expensive, and I don't roll like that, right? I just, my pockets are inside out. They're not deep inside out, right? So the thing about this is that it was, really kind of low budget. You learn to smith with what you can. And I teach that way today. And it's literally digging a hole in the ground. And we use wood to learn how to smith with. So I learned this, and I just kind of, I loved it. I just kind of took to it, and it just fit me. I just was really jazzed about it, and I just have been at it ever since. And then along came starting to work with it magically. And the Morrigan had a lot of influence on this. My smithy is actually dedicated to her. Had a lot of influence in my practice. And as people came to me and said, I would like you to make me a talisman, an amulet, a wand, a thummy, whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, we'll do this. And I started working with the metal. And as I started working with the metal started working with me.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Okay. Start building a relationship with things, you start noticing things, right? And the more you work with things, the more things that aren't normal appear, right? You see things. An example would be, I was working on this person's wand that they had commissioned me to make. And this was like a 3-month project that I was working on. And as I was working on it, lack of a better way, the wand said, no, not like this, like that. Not like that, like this.
Wow.
Or how to form it, how to make it. I had a picture in my mind how I wanted it to look.
Wow.
And I'm working on it, and they were like, no, not like that, like this. And it was another kind of little visual, lack of a better word. It wasn't a projector up on the tree or nothing like that. Nothing sexy. It was just, and I kind of did that, and I showed it because it was completely different than what we had talked about and agreed upon.
Yeah.
In the commissioning. And I said, this is kind of what happens. And if you don't like it, we'll make something else. I want you to make sure that you're happy. This is kind of what this is what it wanted to be. And they were like, "This perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. You took the picture out of my mind and put it in metal. That was perfect." And at that point, I'm like, okay. And I started working with things, and I am a bit of an animist. I mean, I guess I am an animist. You're not kind of, it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. So as I started working with it, I started realizing that, building those relationships with the metal and realizing it. And there were times I would try to make something simple, and it just wouldn't be that.
Yeah.
And the metal would go, that's not what I don't want to be that. And I would end up, okay, well, who wants to be that? And I would just kind of know what piece of, because all the metal, I won't say all, 95, 98% of all the metal that I work with is all repurposed. So it's all trash. It's junk.
So it's already got so much energy in it.
It has a life.
It's got history. It
already has a life.
Yeah.
So now I walk around and go, okay, who wants to be that? And that's kind of how
cool.
stuff happens. And it's just once again, it's about building those relationships. And once you have that relationship, you understand the voices, right? If you have a relationship with a partner, you kind of already know before you need to ask what an answer is going to be, right? I would imagine if you had an intent, my relationship with my spouse, I don't need to ask her a lot of stuff because I already know how she's going to answer.
Right.
But we've been together 20 years, so it has a lot to do with it. But
sure. Well, yeah, but it's the same thing, right? The longer you practice a certain magical practice, the longer you work with a certain element, the longer you work with a deity, the more you get to know that thing, but also the more you get to know yourself, and the more you get to trust yourself, right? Yeah. And so if you 20 years ago, I've been making a wand and the spec that the client gave you was X, but your intuition said, no, make it Y. You'd go, I can make it this. I have to do it this way. You wouldn't trust yourself to be downloading the information from intuition, from spirit, from the metal itself. You wouldn't trust yourself because you haven't been doing that deep work. Like you said, that relationship with self, which I for me is like one of the core components of deep magical working is relationship with self.
Well, yeah, right? If you can go out and buy all the tchotchkes on Amazon and whatever you want, and you ain't got yourself straightened out, you ain't got magic.
Exactly.
You have a train wreck.
Yes.
And an empty pocket. That's all you've got.
Exactly. I love that all of your stuff is repurposed. Natural materials hold energy, right?
Sure. So yeah, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
No, respond.
So the thing about the natural thing that really kind of got me, what started me on this journey, right? This new path was the dawning of it is me.
Ooh, say it again and explain.
Okay. The thing that got me started on this metal magic journey was that it is me. Okay. I am iron. I am copper. I am zinc. And I am tin. I have all of those components within me. Find me somebody that doesn't have iron in their body.
Right.
Find me someone that doesn't have copper in their body, or zinc, or tin. Now don't go out licking this stuff or trying to take, I'm not a doctor.
Don't go licking a Coke can. Like,
I'm not a cooking cast iron skillet. You're good. All right.
Yeah. Those trace elements of the metals stay in our bodies.
But it's already have an intimate connection to the metal. We're not separate. We're just slivers. And once that piece hit in my mind, the way that I think, it was on. I was like, all right, I'm good. I got this. I think I know what's going on. And then I went and did research. I'm doing air quotes for people that can't hear, on trying to find out metal magic.
Right.
Ain't nothing out there.
No.
Nothing. There's buckets. Yeah. There's a little bit on what each one properties are. There may be a sentence on each one, and that's it. There's nothing out there.
Right.
So that's how the book came about. Was, well, I guess you're gonna have to write a book now.
Yeah, right. You're gonna write the book you need, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head with the natural elements, right? That we are metal and the metal is us, and we are earth and earth is us, and air. We are all these things. I was on a panel recently, and one of the questions that the panel moderator asked was, can you separate one of the elements out from the other? And, can you do a real full practice as a pagan or as a witch without, if you never work with water? And my response was, fuck no, you can't, because we are the elements and the elements are us, right? The air is in our lungs. Our bodies are 80% water. We eat food from the earth. We stir with a wooden spoon in a metal pan. Like, these are things that are of earth, and so they are of us, because we are earth and earth is us, right? So these things, these natural things hold energy, and they transmute energy, and they focus energy from one space to another, right?
Mhm.
As a kitchen witch, I always use a wooden spoon in all cases where I can. Every once in a while I have to use a silicone spatula, because otherwise things aren't, things are sticking to things, right? But I'm using that wooden spoon because it conducts energy, and that's putting that energy into the food I'm stirring. I use metal pans because they hold energy, right? Can you talk a little bit about the energy of how the repurposed metals that you work with hold energies?
Well, I mean, they all have a life, right? A previous life. I'll give you an example. I was making an athame for someone. I am not the type of blacksmith that enjoys making sharp, pointy things. That's just not my practice. I don't. It's just not my thing, right? And there's a lot of people that's bladesmithing, and there are some phenomenal bladesmiths that are out there that do a really good job with that. I can do it. I think what I turn out looks really great, and it's got some juice to it. But it's just not my thing. But I was making an athame, and I was making it out of a hay tine, right? And what a hay tine is down here where we, and it's not just local to here, but behind the tractor, after you cut hay, there's these claws called hay tines that drag the hay up so you can then bale it, right? And they're notorious for breaking, right? Because what things happen, right? But it's made out of, it's spring steel, which is a form of tool steel. So it's great metal. It's high caliber metal. So I had someone that wanted me to make an athame, and I was walking through the smithy, and I'm like, okay, I got it right here. And as I started working with it, I was like listening to the story. It's like it was almost telling me that singing the song of its people, lack of a better word, right? And it was like, think of all of the animals that I fed, that I helped feed because I was raking up the hay. And then taking a step further and think of the families that I fed because I could rake up the hay to feed the animals, and, the shoes that I was able to help provide, and food, and, lifestyle and that kind of thing. And then taking that and molding that, co-creating that, 'cause that's how I look at my work, is co-creating, co-creating that into an athame to use as a magical tool to help protect someone within their boundaries, right? Or whatever they wanted to use it for. And it was just, so those are the stories that I get from some of these things, right? I mean, I've got buckets full of junk down there. I've got several 5-gallon buckets full of horseshoes, used horseshoes that I get from a farrier, and some of them were from racing horses, and some of them for work draft horses. And, so these all have these stories, because it's a life,
Right.
with it. And once I've started learning to listen, I've heard more, and you get more and more of the stories from these pieces of metal, and where I live is very heavy in iron in our land naturally anyway. We have a very high concentration of iron where we live. So, it's kind of, you're walking a lot, you can see the rust belts running along the creek. And the cool thing, circling back to what you were saying earlier, because I think this is kind of neat, is blacksmithing is very elemental. because you
Absolutely.
have the air of your bellows, right? Then you have my forge is dirt. It's literally a dirt box.
Hmm.
I'm so high techy. It's not even fun. It's nothing but the best in my place. It's literally a box of dirt with fire bricks around it,
Right.
right? Right. So it's
It's
got
old
fire.
school.
It's old school primitive, so it's got the dirt and it's got the fire, and then you got the water for the quench. So it's got
Right.
all four elements there, plus me.
And you are
Actually,
spirit.
because I actually make my own charcoal that feeds the forge. So I don't get coal or propane, or I don't have anything against any of that stuff. It's just not how my practice is,
Absolutely.
because I want control over the process. So when I provide a magical tool for someone, I know everything about, I know the wood that made the charcoal that helped feed the fire that molded the
Wow.
whatever it was. I know the story of everything that was involved in the process.
Wow.
So
That's incredible. You know, I I'm I have a couple of pieces in my magical toolbox, and my magical toolbox being my kitchen, and my cabinets that store my tools for my magical workings that are incredibly special to me because they are passed down from my great grandmother from Italy. And one of these things is a hammered copper muffin tin that came with my great grandmother from Italy in, 1909 or
and it was probably
something.
made in Romania because they made some of the best copper stuff on the planet.
I don't know where it I don't know where
Yeah,
it was made, but I know that it's lasted generations.
it's a legacy
And
item.
the legacy item, but why is it a legacy item? It's a legacy item because the energy of generations of kitchen witches in my family that had no idea they were kitchen witches that were cooking and baking and creating meals for their loved ones is held within that metal.
Mm-hmm.
That metal is holding that energy and then seeping that into anything that I cook in that pan, in that tin. And I only use it for special occasions. Like I've got a regular one that I got to like Williams Sonoma that's for everyday muffins. If I'm going to make muffins for a special occasion, for a holiday, for someone who's ill, a gift, something like that, I'm going to use this special muffin tin. I have a muffin tin. I have a banana bread, like a loaf pan. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have this circular, it's like a 2-inch deep. I don't even know what kind of metal it is. But I call it Nona's pan, and it's just, and which is weird because I didn't know her and I never called her Nona, but I call her that. And it's this heavy, like I have no idea what kind of metal it is, but it's really heavy and it's got to be, this thing's got to be 120 years old. It holds the energy of the love, the joy, the sorrow, the whatever that was felt, over years and decades. And I don't think people think about metal this way. I don't think they think about wood. I don't think we don't think about the tools that we use as magical on their own,
No,
right?
and you're adding to it. I mean, you're giving it tribute by using it, because that's what it was designed for. And as you use it, you're adding your stories for those future generations to
Right.
have a story to tell, to
Right.
and that energy to continue. So yeah.
Out of all the metals that you've worked with, is there one that you feel, I mean, you mentioned iron.
Mhm.
Is there something that you feel has been the most influential in your magical working, or something that has really spoken to you that you weren't expecting to speak to you?
Hmm. That's a good question, because they're also unique. You have that umbrella of metal, but that's it, right? Because
Right.
iron and copper are completely different compounds.
Hmm.
Now brass and bronze are alloys of copper, so that's a little different. But even that, they're so unique from copper
Hmm.
that they don't even really resemble that metal. Um, I can't really say.
Okay.
I'll do this instead. I'll tell you what my favorite tool is.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
My favorite tool is a metal die.
Okay.
Out of everything I've made, I have a great, beautiful short sword that I wrote about in the book, and people can see pictures of it online. It's gorgeous. It's, it's about yay long. I don't know, what is that? 3 feet, maybe 2.5, 3 feet long. It's got a copper and bronze handle. It's stunning. That I was commissioned by her to make. What the hell do I need a sword for? Anyway, um, I'm in the country. There ain't nobody around me. I'm
Right.
middle of nowhere. But my favorite tool, I have a metal die that I make. They're called divination die, and it is my favorite tool. 2 sides are yes, 2 sides are no, and 2 sides are blank, and they stand for rephrase the question. And I use that for checking my ego.
Wow.
All right. So when I'm in process, when I'm doing a reading, when I'm doing meditations and I'm catching things, those kind of things, I will use it to check to make sure I'm picking up what's being put down.
Wow.
It's not just me thinking outside the box, because if we're doing it on our own, I may have some of me slide in there going, yeah, well, I know me, right? So I use it as a system of checks and balances, to where, is that all you want to say to me? Right? Yes, no, rephrase the question.
That's so
Is there
cool.
more? Am I missing anything? Do you have something else you want me to do? And a lot of times I'll get some of that rephrase the question because I'm not asking it at a level deep enough dive to get a good answer.
Right.
Right. So that's probably my favorite tool. It's just it's a 1/2 inch. I've got one over here because I have them everywhere.
Yeah, show us.
Okay, for those of you that are at home. So there's no, it's a circle with an X.
Oh, that's cool.
And then there's a circle. And then there's a blank. And it's just a little piece of metal die that all my forging is sacred forging. So I don't, that's what I do. So I don't, there's not, so everything I make is sacred, right?
Absolutely.
So it's, I set space with everything that I do. And being that it's dedicated to her, anyway, so yeah, that's probably my favorite tool, is that little bitty 1/2 inch die.
Well, yeah, and you sounds like you use it all the time,
I
and
use it
it's
regularly.
again,
Yeah.
it's
I won't
part
say
of an
all the time, but I
intimate
use it regularly.
practice.
Well,
That's so cool.
I don't know how you are, but there are times where I don't know. Am I hearing that right? Am I understanding that? Is that it? Is there something else? That doesn't. I don't know. And it's just a real quick way for me to check in, to go. No. Okay. Well, then what?
Right. Is it spirit talking to me? Is it intuition talking to me? Or is it fear?
Yeah.
Is fear sitting back there going, you shouldn't do that thing?
Yeah. You don't need, take the easy way.
Correct. Yeah. No, no, go, chill out, dude.
Skip
Take
that.
the
You don't
easy
need
way.
to do that.
Exactly. So
You don't need
that
to go hang out with them folks. That's,
you don't need to go do that. No. So what a cool tool. I want to ask you
I
another
know that's
question.
not sexy or anything like that. I should pull out a dagger or something like that,
But you're not going to pull out a dagger in the middle of your meditation in the morning while you're drinking your coffee after you fed your cat. That's not, no, I don't know any witches that are doing that. I don't know any pagans that are doing that. Not on a regular, not on a daily, right? We're talking about real daily practices. We're not talking about what you do for, celebrating, Samhain. We're not talking about that. We're talking about everyday real practice, how we live our lives. Nobody's pulling out a sword on a Tuesday morning at 8:30 in the morning while they're in their pajamas. Like
most people aren't. I'm sure there's somebody that's
I'm
doing
sure
that.
there's somebody out there, but I would like to say to that person, if you're doing that, good on you, but you might be overcompensating. Okay. Like, let's just, I want to ask you another question. Are there any misconceptions about metal or metalworking that you want to debunk while you have the option?
Thank you for asking that, because I think the biggest one, more than anything else, is you don't need to be a blacksmith to work metal magic. Please, you don't need to. Let's just take that right off the table. Metal magic is not about blacksmithing. It's not. You're already connected to it. You don't need to do anything else. Pull a 1981 penny out of your pocket, because that's copper, and you can work magic with the penny. Pull the keys out of your pocket. They're metal. You can work magic with that key. I mean, you're already connected to it. You don't need to do anything else. the trick is to work the practice. I look at it as a practice.
Yeah.
Right. Just like tarot, just like herb work, just like root medicine, just like any of that. It's a practice, which means you got to work at it. Right.
Yes.
Somebody swiped my magic fairy dust, and I just can't do that. And it just works right. Right. So I just, somebody's bogarting it. Anyway. So you've got to work it, but it's a practice. So it's not limited in my mind. It is not limited to any tradition or any mythology, because metal magic is global, and me doing the research for the book, because I wrote about several different traditions in the book that have metal magic mythology.
Right.
And it's global. I mean, it's not just, up in, Celtic lands, or in, the Mediterranean. It's Asia, it's Africa, it's, it's Great Lakes. We have
metal is found all over our planet.
All over the planet. So it's not limited to anybody's, there's no one tradition that has claim on it. So everybody can do it. The key is just do the work.
Right. And you can then incorporate that into whatever practice you do practice.
However you want to do it. Yeah.
However you want to. Oh, that's so cool. So Sam Bo Thompson, here's your book, Metal Never Lies, An Introduction to Metal Magic. So tell everyone who is listening,
those are the dice on the front, by the way. I forgot the picture.
These are them on the front. Oh, the dice, yes, on the front, right there. Again, for lots of people can't see if they're just listening to the audio, but go then watch the video on YouTube and you can see it. Where can people find you online? Where can they buy your book? How can they follow you and learn more?
Buy the book. You can get it from Amazon. Okay, I'm on Amazon, both Kindle and paper. You can get.
Excellent.
You can order it from my website, ravenskeepforge.com.
ravenskeepforge.com.
And we'll do something. If you've made it this far in and I haven't bored you to death, we'll do this. If you buy it from my website, I can't help what Amazon does, but if you buy it from my website, in the checkout process, you put in the code KW for Kitchen Witch 23, I'll give you $5 off the book.
Whoa, guys, did you hear that? He's going to give you $5 off the book at checkout at ravenskeepforge.com when you enter the code KW23 at checkout. That's awesome.
Kitchen Witch year 23. So
thank you for doing that for our listeners.
My responsibility is to get it out.
That's great.
I was tasked with doing it, so I'm doing it, and y'all go fly, be free. Just do the work.
Well, yeah, and we're gonna put all of your information on the show notes. So anybody who didn't quite get that, you can go to the show notes and you can click on Sam Bo Thompson's links, and you can follow him on Instagram, and you can get up on his website, and you can learn all about metal magic.
Just ad nauseum. I'm everywhere.
He's everywhere. Metal Never Lies, An Introduction to Metal Magic by Sam Bo Thompson. Okay, Sam, Bo, last question. And this has nothing to do with metal magic. This is the question I ask everyone at the end of the interview. Okay, you ready?
Sure.
If you could have me as a kitchen witch make you one magical meal, what would it be and why?
Bread.
Just bread. Just plain ass.
Bread is a meal.
White bread.
No, not white bread. Bread. Some focaccia, some
ciabatta.
I've seen your dipping sauces, so bring your sauces and let's have some bread.
And that's funny because
olives, and we'll have olives and bread. I'm good.
That's all you need. Carbs.
That's it. Yeah,
that's it. No one has ever asked me to bake for them. I'm not the greatest baker, so that would be a big challenge, but I could do it for you.
Isn't life a big challenge anyway?
Yeah, and then you would have to bring some knives that we could cut the bread with.
Well, come take a class and we'll do all that.
We'll hook it up. Thank you so much for being here. This was delightful.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So much fun having you. Remember to check out Sam Bo Thompson at ravenskeepforge.com. And until next time, everyone, I wish you so many blessings and so much gratitude. Bye.